of information. I wish I could just pen down everything that you said. Very power packed and collection of many short stories, very powerful stories. Definitely, I would like audience to really perhaps would have made some notes as well there. But I think this is the power of data, and then power of data can really change organizations completely. The biggest organizations globally have realized it. India conglomerates are realizing it, and those who have late in the journey are now at the mercy of acquisitions of the digital companies. And but when you're building up a data ecosystem in your organization, one thing that can go wrong is you build a bad kitchen. So while you can be a great chef, but if you build a bad kitchen, that could just, one day lead to a food poisoning. When I say bad kitchen, means bad practices of keeping data, governance, quality, management. And with that, I would like to bring our third speaker, Tejasvi, who's a thought leader and author on the data management, the governance space in the financial services sector. Tejasvi, what are the key considerations with respect to data governance, data quality, program, regulatory compliance that organizations must address to get the maximized ROI and monetize the data effectively? Over to you.
Yeah, Sachin, thanks for having me here. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Well then, thanks to the council as well. Has been a really interesting forum while we have been doing this day in and day out for the past 15 years. But at the outset, most Indian banks are experiencing an upward curve, specifically in indirectly monetizing data. And when I talk about indirectly monetizing data, it can be related to how we actually take these outcomes and benefits from having to crunch the data trove that organizations have in terms of providing value and benefits to the customers. So it can be as simple as having to reduce the anxiety of the customers when it comes to having to service it. Someone like a customer who would have changed his or her address, but would not have been looking at it in the mobile or in the laptop or even in the records. How do we ensure that we reduce the anxiety of the customers as well as bring the satisfaction on the other end? And that's where the narrative around outcomes from having to manage data and having to govern it, and the benefits that actually cascade from having to do that needs to be well documented. If you ask me, in an organization and specifically within the bank, I would not want to quote insights from the bank now, but at the outset, I'm more interested in having to understand how can I translate these value and risk realization frameworks into actual benefits and outcomes for the customers. So today, when I talk about data protection and myself as a data protection officer, it's more about how do I cascade this trust that I'm building internally for an organization out there to the customers. And this is what actually makes even an enabler to the corporate governance of an organization. And as a data protection officer, it becomes more imminent that certain enablers like having to focus on data curation, data collection management, along with integration, which usually a data office focuses on, is quite important as well. And till the last year, we have been asking certain questions like where does the data reside, and how can I pick that data up? How does an analyst, in fact, report or model using that particular data? What is the quality of it? And how well is the collaboration across, multiple people within the organization? But today we are asking extended questions. And the question can be around, do I really need this data? Like a nominee name, which in fact we take in an application form for a product in a financial services kind of an industry. And what is the legitimate interest or a regulatory ask or a contractual obligation that we have associated with a nominee name? And when I keep asking this question to a branch user, what I get to understand is a nominee, in fact, is not a participant in a transaction during account opening process. But when I ask someone who is consuming nominee name during the end life cycle of the data, I get to understand that a nominee, in fact, is a participant in the transaction during an account closure. So it becomes all the more important to translate the context in which data is getting created and the context in which data is getting consumed. And this is where cataloging, in fact, becomes a very important aspect. Now, I think we all know that, we have KPMG and your services having to augment my team in terms of pulling out a metadata for an important line of business, which in fact we would want to democratize. And having to democratize it, reducing on our data provisioning cycles from weeks to days is in fact helping us digitize this particular business line better. And our time to market is in fact reducing. And further to this, I think it's a feather to the hat that most of the data officers in fact are picking up data privacy as a dimension, as a formalized dimension, which in fact is shifting our responsibilities to ensuring that data is secure as well in its landscape, in its form as it exists in databases, platforms, and importantly, as we move to the cloud, it becomes all the more important to understand what is the key management cycle, how do we manage our keys, what are the kinds of encryption that we need to take into consideration, how do we encrypt data at rest, data in motion, and how in fact we simplify this entire landscape and make it interoperable. And one other aspect which I wanted to touch upon is data quality management. I know we have been taking a benefits-based approach in India, at least, having to put across a certain metrics against customer data or even financial data. But taking a well-rounded view from risk, compliance, the second line and the third line in terms of coming up with a risk and a value realization framework will in fact make it more beneficial. And perhaps yourself and Sneha would have touched upon the platforms as well as the kind of migrations we are seeing as cycles when we go cloud native. I mean, the way I see it is cloud is a default choice for platforms today, and anything on-prem, it's termed as a bad word. We are not seeing on-prem as a default choice today, and this increasingly is making us ensure that we make this landscape simplified, and we also ensure that it's protected in a way that we cascade the trust and we account for data sustainability in a larger way. And this in fact is having to strengthen our data value chains with the customers. So that's some of my few thoughts, Sachin.
Thank you, Tejasvi. I think you touched upon how to build, how to create a platform of trust, which is data-backed platform of trust, which organizations and business users can, leverage without really worrying about, because data lives a long ride from cradle to the grave, and it does a lot of things in between. And if it is not cataloged well, not governed well, not managed well, not qualitatively taken an account of, the outcomes could be wrong. It's you're playing with a fireball, and if it works in your favor, you can win the game, or if it works against you, it can also burn you back. So great conversation, and I just want to leave this framework of using data for three large purposes: to increase the top line, offense strategy; build the bottom line against the offense strategy; securitize and risk somewhat in defense strategy; governance, management, quality, defense strategy. And I hope you liked our session and look forward for listening to many of you. All of us are pretty easily accessible on LinkedIn, again, a digital native platform. So figure us out, and wish to hear a lot from you. Thank you very much, everyone, and thanks all the panelists for coming in here and sharing your thoughts. Thoroughly enjoyed.